Let's just talk about the two incidences, Sergio. So the first one in Mhlabuyalingana in KwaZulu-Natal, I see thereafter the bakkie was deemed unroadworthy, and a lot of sort of authorities, it sounds like they were just sort of passing the buck. Matter of fact is, there shouldn't have been that many people on the back of a bakkie unsecured.
Look, that's the thing. You can be a great driver of a bakkie, but you can't account for other people's reckless behavior. And the fact that you've got so many people jammed in the back of a space, which is not ideal for human beings at all. You've got no safety, no barrier above you.
Yeah.
Case in point, you don't even have to have a canopy on the back of your bakkie, which might actually protect you in a crash. Not that much, considering most of them are plastic or fiberglass. But it's an awful situation. And as you rightly said, we'll get ministers to say their condolences. We're sorry this happened. Once again, this has happened. We'll do everything in our power to stop this. But the fact is they can't, because the regulations don't stipulate that they should. One of the things in the National Road Traffic Act says that you can't transport people for reward, i.e. you can't pay someone to drop you in a bakkie. That's about it. So you can't actually ask cops to do anything because the regulations don't say that it should. I've got 4 points that I'd like to bring up with regards to transporting bakkies. First of all, we've got to stop reckless driving behavior. I understand that this is a very soft option, but the fact is you're dealing with people. You've got people's lives in your hands if you're the driver of a bakkie. So maybe you could remember that the next time you're picking up 10 oaks to go to your farm. And also, if you see bakkies driving recklessly on the road, report it. It's up to everybody else to enforce road law. Then secondly, we've got to have legislation change. How can you expect the cops to do anything if they don't have the power to do so? But then this is part and parcel with state support. What should then happen? If you say it's illegal for people to carry passengers on the back of a bakkie, what should happen? Should state support ensure that they have taxis? Should we get rid of bakkies in terms of like transportation and then give them taxis to drive around? These things need to be discussed. Doesn't seem like anybody's doing this, and this has been going on for decades. And then lastly, law enforcement. South Africa has this weird habit of passing laws. We pass lots of laws. Well, not specifically to the transportation of people in bakkies, but if we pass these kinds of laws, they've got to be enforced.
Sergio, with the holiday season coming up, I mean, you and I both know it's a time when the traffic cops are everywhere.
We hope.
Well, generally, and just, I mean, in terms of speeding fines, surely this is something that they should be putting their energy into. Obviously, speeding kills, but what I'm trying to say is their presence is there. Why are they not pulling these guys aside and trying to, is it because they have no law, particular statutes to go by?
Sure, look, lots of law enforcement will say to the contrary, but the fact is there's not a lot of visible policing going on. It's only during high-risk areas, well, times as it were, in December and January, and then again in Easter, when they're out on the road doing roadblocks. For most part, many South Africans will agree they'd rather just sit in the back of a car using a camera to snap you, which I don't know if the research shows, but doesn't do anything in terms of stopping the oak who's actually speeding. With regards to cops trying to enforce these laws, like I said, there's no real regulation to stop them. They can only ensure that you don't exceed the maximum limit of passengers in there, and with regards to children, that your sides and rear of the bakkie are of an appropriate height. That's one of the two things that they can do. They can also stop you if you're speeding, which I always found is baffling. You're driving along down the road, probably at about 140 k's an hour, and you've got people on the back, not a cabinet. If anything happens, can you imagine the damage? And we can actually see the reality of it just in point of our 2 crashes that we've had.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of the second one, I see that was a bakkie colliding with a Golf, fatalities in both vehicles.
Yeah.
How do, I mean, what is the way forward? How do we clamp down on this?
Look, it's important for lawmakers to first acknowledge the fact that it needs to change.
Sorry to interrupt you, but is it a resources, is it a manpower issue? Do we not have enough traffic cops on the roads per, vehicle driver?
Look, that's a toughie. Short answer, we don't. And also we don't have enough competent cops as well. Training needs to be there. And also, if perhaps legislation was to, the lawmakers were to look at the legislation and understand that things need to be done. It's not a case of convenience anymore. Look, I can understand. You've got oaks that need to get to a farm, put them on the back of your bakkie. They get to the site, you've got a work vehicle around there, you drop them back. I can understand on a farm setting in that scenario why a bakkie would then make sense. But now you're talking about taking those same people on the highway. And even more alarmingly, you've got kids in the back of bakkies being dropped off at schools, which is just mind-boggling that someone would do this. But more often is the case, it comes down to budgets. What are they supposed to do with these workers? How else are they going to get to the farm? And what's a farm worker supposed to do in terms of transport? Is he supposed to sell his bakkie, get a state-sponsored taxi just for this? And how much is that going to cost? And what's it going to cost him?